Hi, ArcfieldWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Tuesday morning, February 14th. Looks like quite a mild weather pattern will continue for the bulk of this week in the eastern third of the nation. In fact, on Wednesday and Thursday, it looks like temperatures could climb into the 60s, D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, maybe even the upper 60s in places like the Washington, D.C. metro region over the next couple of days. That's after a relatively mild day here on Tuesday. There will be showers from Thursday into early Friday with the next cold front, and it does turn noticeably colder in the eastern U.S. for Saturday. But as has been the case in recent weeks, this upcoming cold snap will be short-lived. We rebound in temperatures again on Sunday and Monday going into next week across much of the eastern part of the nation. Now, looking ahead to later next week, the pattern gets certainly more interesting. It looks like there could be a pretty expansive area of some kind of frozen precipitation in the northern U.S., and that's kind of what we'll focus in on here over the next several minutes. Let's start off by looking at last night's ensemble run of the GFS with respect to 500 millibar height anomalies. This is the 0Z ensemble run. And first of all, we have a lot of ridging here across the eastern part of the nation and upper level troughs out across the west. This has kind of been a consistent pattern over the past several weeks with warm in the eastern half of the nation, with some colder than normal conditions out in the west. Now, let's move forward here and we'll go all the way into next week. Again, the ridge kind of intensifies at midweek here and could have temperatures in the 60s, D.C., Philadelphia, New York City on Wednesday and Thursday as well. Look at this, strong ridge sitting right on top of the mid-Atlantic coastline here by Thursday morning. But here comes an upper level trough, and it has a pretty strong cold frontal system with it. And that ushers in some colder air for the beginning of the weekend into the eastern part of the U.S. This is the Friday morning forecast map here in terms of 500 millibar height anomalies. The front just moving off the coast at this time, certainly cooler on Friday as compared with Thursday in the eastern part of the nation, and it really gets cold on Saturday. Here we are Saturday morning, but right on the heels of that frontal system, another ridge of high pressure. Temperatures will rebound pretty quickly once again in places like D.C., Philadelphia, New York City by the time we get to Sunday and Monday. Now, let's get into next week, and here's the Sunday morning forecast map, and then into Monday morning. Let's go even a little bit farther in time into Tuesday morning. A few things I want to point out here. First of all, notice the ridging that has been very consistent over the southeastern part of the nation for the last several weeks, really the last couple of months, gets pushed a little bit to the south and east. At the same time, the colder air mass with upper level low starts to expand across the northern U.S. and into throughout Canada as well. Again, this is a week from right now. Next Tuesday, February 21st, go out a little bit farther in time into the middle part of next week. And here we have quite a boundary zone we'll be setting up here with this ridge kind of being pushed a little bit farther to the south and east, and the cold air being able to make some inroads into the Midwest, into the Mid-Atlantic region by the time we get to middle and latter part of next week. Let's go out a little bit farther in time, all the way to Thursday. And you can see right here, this kind of flow right here will set up a boundary zone right in this region here with some pretty cold air just to the north and west, and milder air shunted a little bit to the south and east. So this is opening the door for some frozen precipitation, let's say mid and late next week, something we'll probably focus in on not only throughout the remainder of this week, but for the first half of next week as well. Well, let's take a look at last night's 0Z operational run of the GFS. Those prior maps, which, by the way, are available at tropicaltidbits.com, or from the ensemble run of the 0Z GFS. Now we're looking at 850 millibar temperature anomalies from the 0Z run. Again, warmer, the eastern half of the nation near normal or colder than normal. The west half, by the way, quite cold in California with this particular influx of cold air here. even some snow in some unusual places possible in California over the next 12 to 24 hours or so. Go into the day on Wednesday, and the intensity of that ridging in the northeastern states brings about an even milder day on Wednesday as compared to today, which is relatively mild to begin with, but warmer on Wednesday and even Thursday as well. Places like D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, Boston, all the way up along the Atlantic seaboard. Meanwhile, still colder than normal out in the west. Now, let's kind of quickly go through, and here we are into the end of the week, and here's that initial frontal system right here. A strong cold front comes through the eastern states Thursday night, early Friday, rain ahead of it. Maybe a change over to snow in the interior sections of the mid-Atlantic region, interior sections of the northeast U.S. later Thursday night, early Friday. And quite a cold shot comes in to the eastern states. Here we are now all the way into Saturday morning. But look at that. It quickly moves off the coast, and it's just a short-lived, by the time we get to the second half of the upcoming weekend already, warmer than normal conditions across the Midwest, the Northeast U.S., all the way out the middle part of the nation. Now, we get into next week, and here we are all the way into Tuesday of next week. This is a week from right now, next Tuesday, February 21st. And right here is that boundary zone setting up. You notice you've got the colder air moving in from the north and west. And really, this warmer air is starting to retreat to the south and east. And this will become quite an active boundary zone by the time we get to the middle part of next weekend. With that cold air intrusion into the Midwest, into the Mid-Atlantic region, it increases the chance for some frozen precip, even into the Mid-Atlantic region where it has been missing for the last several weeks. Here we are now into next Thursday. Again, it's not a flooding of the cold air into the Mid-Atlantic region, but it may penetrate enough from the northwest and the southeast to allow for some frozen precipitation in the latter part of next week in the Mid-Atlantic region, certainly in the northeastern part of the nation, but really a wall of cold across Canada by the time we get into the second half of next week. We'll go a little bit farther in time, and here we go. That ridge pops up again a little bit, but then we have a little bit more of an intrusion of that cold air at the end of next week. Now, let's walk through the surface forecast maps from the Zero-Z GFS, and again, we'll kind of focus in on next week's frozen precipitation threat. For the immediate future, warmer than normal, and it really intensifies on Wednesday and Thursday in the Mid-Atlantic region. Here we are now going into the day on Thursday, and here's that first frontal system. Will become quite an active front. It throws some rain into the Mid-Atlantic region during the day on Thursday. Here's the frontal system right at this particular time, right in this location, late Thursday night, early Friday morning, moving in this direction, and colder air is moving from northwest to southeast in that fashion. Let's go out a little bit farther in time. A little bit of a changeover. The far western part of the Mid-Atlantic region, interior sections of the northeast behind that frontal passage here by the time we get to Friday. And again, a cold air mass, no doubt, cold air for Friday night into the day on Saturday, but a short-lived cold snap. Temperatures rebound by the time we get to Sunday. You have this high-pressure system sitting here off the Atlantic seaboard, and we all know winds blow clockwise around highs. That'll start pumping in milder air first to the Ohio Valley on Saturday, then into the Mid-Atlantic region for Sunday and Monday. Now, let's go out farther in time here. Again, this is last night's GFS model run, and here we are now, kind of a subtle frontal passage, maybe a very subtle but important frontal passage during the early part of next week that really starts the turnover of temperatures into a colder pattern. Right here, notice here, kind of a boundary setting up right in this region. We talked about an influx of colder air. It doesn't come pouring in to the Mid-Atlantic region, but it comes filtering in by the middle of next week with that ridge kind of retrograding, or not retrograding, but retreating a little bit in this fashion. So this becomes kind of a natural temperature gradient boundary zone setting up here. And by the time we get to Tuesday of next week, that's a week from right now, a little bit farther in time, and here we go. The possibility of cold air anchored by high pressure. That's one of the key features I always look for in the I-95 corridor region. You almost need this as a requirement for any kind of significant frozen precipitation in the I-95 corridor region. And there is looking like high pressure over southeastern Canada. Again, this is way out there now, the middle of next week. So the possibility of some frozen precip anywhere from snow to ice at this time, at least across parts of the northern mid-Atlantic as we get into the middle and latter part of next week. Low pressure forms right along that boundary zone and pushes any kind of subtle differences. We'll monitor closely over the next few days from where this boundary zone sets up a little bit farther to the south and east, allows that colder air to penetrate a little bit farther to the south and east, several days away. And that boundary kind of sits there, and there's other systems that may roll along. Here we go out into the latter part of next week with more cold air waiting in the winds at the end of next week across the southern part of Canada. Now, I wanted to wrap up with a look at another model. This is the Canadian model, just to take a look at a second model here for specifically for the pattern setting up for next week. Let's move forward here. Mild next few days, consistent with this model as compared with the GFS. And here comes that frontal system late this week. Throw some rain showers into the mid-Atlantic, northeast U.S. Thursday into Friday, and then that front comes through. By the time we get to later Friday, cold Friday night into Saturday, short-lived cold snap. We get into Sunday, that high pressure shifts to off the eastern seaboard. And here we go. Now, by the time we get to next Tuesday, a week from right now, starting to see this boundary zone setting up right in this region right here again, with colder air filtering in from the north and west, and that high over the southeast U.S. may be retreating a little bit in this fashion, allowing for some colder air to make its way potentially into the mid-Atlantic region in the middle latter part of next week. Let's go out a little bit farther in time, and here we are now in the middle of next week. This is forecast map for next Wednesday, and then we go into next Thursday, and we talked about the possibility of frozen precipitation, and there you have it with the Canadian model. It has quite an extensive area of ice, that is sleet or freezing rain with snow to the north of there. And here's that all-important high. One of the things we'll monitor over the next few days as it moves into southeastern Canada. That will be a key that we'll look for next week for the possibility of some frozen precipitation latter part of next week throughout much of the northern U.S. That's it for now. For ArcfieldWeather.com, I'm meteorologist Paul Dorey.